Hello, everybody. I see people signing on. This is Nancy Phillips. I'm a coordinator for the Illinois Family Resource Center. I am going to very quickly turn on my video so that you can see it's really me here. But I am going to turn it back off and let you see the picture of me because my house has been fighting all these germs and bugs that have been going around. And so today I'm actually working from home. I said in 35 years of doing training and workshops, I have never missed one. And just because I'm having trouble with a scratchy throat and this bug that seems to have taken over our household, we're going to do this because this is a fun workshop to do. And I'm glad you're all here. We are recording it today, and I will let you know that starting this year, we have a YouTube channel for our videos. And if you go on the website, which I posted in the chat, if you missed this or want somebody else to watch this, you certainly can do that. They will be posted pretty much within 24 to 48 hours after we deliver the webinars. So, join us any way that you can. And excuse me, I'm afraid some of that's going to happen. I saw some real familiar names on the list of people registered for today. So hello, everybody. I'm really glad to see you. I wish it was in person. I love doing things in person. I think those of you that know me are very well aware of that. But I also think that this is a great opportunity for all of us in this field and people in our communities and our organizations and agencies to share information. I'm learning Zoom, and we're going to do this. I also hope that our chat is working. We had a couple of webinars where it wasn't wanting to cooperate, and I think that got addressed today finally. So I'm going to ask you to do some responses in that. And helping me today is Tiffany Coons, and she will really be watching the chat and feeding me any information or questions that I need to address or responses, because I'm going to ask you to be part of this. Tiffany is one of the prevention specialists for the Our House Prevention Program. I am the coordinator of the Illinois Family Resource Center, which is a statewide project, which is part of SUPER. And our house holds that contract too. And I do a lot of connections all over the state. And here we are. Here's the logo. Here's the website. This is the newest email address I have. If you're using my old one, I still get those emails. So don't worry about that. But we are converting, and this one seems to cooperate much better. But the Family Resource Center is now finishing up its 8th year, and it's funded by the Department of Human Services, the Division of Substance Use Prevention and Recovery. And it is an interesting journey. I have loved every minute of it, and it's changed over the 8 years since it started. We focus primarily on adolescents and getting families involved in treatment services, and it's just kept growing and expanding over the last 8 years. And that's an exciting thing for me, because if you notice back here, I have certifications, addiction certification, certified family partnership professional, but the PLE is one thing that probably brings me as much experience as anything, and that's a person of lived experience. I'm a person with 4 generations of living with or responding to substance use disorder, mental health issues, and I actually have a family member now that's having some gambling issues. So we're all getting there. I know that families need the support that we can give them, the resources that we can give them, the education that we can give them. And I am totally committed to this. Okay. Our goal is to provide information and support around substance use disorder, known as SUDS, mental health issues, and gambling disorder and the impact on families. We can't talk about families without actually talking about the person that's experiencing those disorders too, because that's what creates the environment for the most part that families are dealing with. But I believe that families, and have said this from the beginning, long ago, I've been in this field over 40 years, that families can get better even if the person that they love and care about and impacts their environment is struggling with it. And the more that we get stronger and better, the more able we are to be a positive influence on the person that we love or care about that is also addressing these issues. We provide information to human service providers, to parents, to significant others, and to communities through a variety of methods. And those include website postings. I post to the website several times a week. We've done some revision a couple of times with the website as we keep trying to upgrade it and make it more useful. You will find links in the opening banner to resources for treatment for gambling, the 988 connections that we have for mental health that's national, for Illinois' resources for treatment services. Those are all there. We have a Facebook page, which is posted to about 5 times a week. And this is just everything from what can families do to take care of themselves? What do we need to know? A little educational things with links, and some motivational things, just things to think about to make your day better, especially if you're someone living in the chaos of substance use disorder and the other issues that may go along with that. We know that about 80% of people with gambling issues also have some substance use issues. So those things that we're talking about are so linked and so impact the family in general. And that family can be anyone. That family can be anyone that cares about that person and that is identified. It doesn't have to be biological. And in many instances, it isn't. In my many years in the field, one of the things I have done is I coordinated outpatient services that covered a number of programs, including outpatient services, DUI, DCFS, outpatient services, worked with the court systems, family treatment court. I've been very blessed to have a really wide variety. So I can bring that and that aspect of looking at the families and the impact of that to what we do and what we offer. Do technical assistance and facilitation. So if anyone's got groups that they're needing either by virtually by Zoom or in person, I can get back out and travel this state in person now, and I love it because I get to see people again and actually interact with them. We can do individualized in-service. Many of the in-services that I used to do are actually topics that we now do in webinars. The thing that's really nice about an individualized in-service, whether it's on Zoom or in person, is that we can take that topic that we talk about in general, like today we're going to be talking about traditions and rituals, and this is kind of in general and how does it impact. Then we can take that information and look at that organization or that group or that agency and say, what is it we need to focus on around this topic for you? So get a hold of me if that's something you're interested in. I do conferences and exhibits. I've done a lot of those already this year, and we will have some ahead of us, one in January that is coming up right after the holidays. The other thing I do is I spend a lot of time looking at new information that's coming, looking for new resources and looking at new websites and building that in, hopefully, in ways that people get excited about what they're learning and understand more about what's going on in their environment or their issue. One of the things that's been exciting to me in the last couple of years, and actually, I guess we started doing work with ROSC, Recovery Oriented Systems of Care, And looking at Ross Councils 5 years ago, I was involved in some of those first meetings, and those were a little over 5 years ago. And Illinois Super has made a commitment for those to be growing throughout the state. And there are a number of those, and that's where we have communities, different members from the communities that come together and say, how can we support recovery? How can we support families and the people that are in the recovery process and involve them in our community as a whole and make this a better place? Create a higher level of success for recovery, less recidivism, help people get into treatment, help people find those resources as they come out and move ahead. And I find that extremely exciting because it's just going to keep growing and growing. And I've been very fortunate to have participated around the state, sometimes with Zoom, with different ROSC meetings and councils. I have them involved. There are some ROSC councils involved in some of the training that I do around a family program that we offer. And that just keeps growing. And I find that really exciting. My wish for you today is we're going to look at some of the impact of traditions on community norms, discover the value of creating healthy traditional identities that are unique and special for each person, for each family, for each community. I think as we look at today, I mean, we're coming up on holidays. We've had Thanksgiving, and we're getting ready to start Hanukkah, and then we've got Christmas and Kwanzaa coming up. These are all very important and special times. Now, we can talk about traditions and rituals year round, but I like doing this through the holidays because we know oftentimes substance use increases, family issues increase, gambling increases, those things as the stresses of the holidays come, especially if you're struggling with getting your needs met. It's something to take a look at. How can we help our communities come through this in a healthier way? I think that it's important to look at how tradition supports healthy child development, because we know that our environments that our children are growing up in, especially if there's substance use disorder and other stressors, it impacts how our children are developing, and it impacts whether there's trauma that they carry forward. So I want to take a look at that. And this is not necessarily offered just for what you do for people that you work with or the community groups that you're part of. To me, this webinar is for you to take a look at. How do you take care of yourself through the holidays? And what are some of the special things that you can do to make your traditions and rituals healthier or to make you healthier? So I want you to just sit back and think about this. And we're going to explore the stages of change and how, as a family member that may be struggling in the chaos of substance use disorder, mental health, gambling, how can you start to take care of yourself? And I think that this will be some good information. And then I'm going to offer you some resources you may not have thought of. And I want you to have some fun. I'm going to ask you to respond to some things. And I want you to be sure and sit back and have a laugh. Be happy, keep smiling. One of the things that I think as we start this is a good thing to look at is really looking at some definitions, because it has a lot to do with what our traditions and rituals are. Looking at the definition of race that refers to the biological makeup of an individual, you know, that's pretty much one layer. And then the ethnicity is learned factors that are inherited through your environment, through that race after the child is born. And then culture is a system of patterns of belief and behavior that shape the worldview of the members of a society, of a community. So our cultures are different. And it's often based on the race and ethnicity of how those patterns of belief shape our worldview. And I thought that it was kind of interesting to take a look at what ethnicity traits are. It's a shared language, it's a shared culture, shared traditions, nationality, and religious affiliations all pulled together. When I use the word tradition, what comes to mind for you? Can you go to the chat box and Tiffany can take a look at it? I'm going to keep going, but I want to come back, and as some things go in there, tell us, in 2 or 3 words, what does tradition mean to you? Because it means different things to different people. Anyone going to share? And I hope that we aren't having trouble with chat, because we have, and I thought we had it taken care of.
It looks like we have rituals, celebrating family rituals that are passed down through generations. Doing the
Cool.
same activity, generational.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. That's very much what I think. Rituals and traditions are really important to me for some reason. Back when I was coordinating outpatient services, we used to do a lot of work with that. I would work with the coordinators that delivered the services and did the groups, and especially around the holidays, we would look at what are rituals and traditions that are out there and what can we do to make those fit into their recovery. Any others that have come up, Tiffany?
Religious, personal, other customs, followed by a group of people passed down annually. Customs and beliefs passed down from generation, a lot of generations, and family activities.
Cool, you guys are doing great. I may not have to do the rest of these definitions. One of the things I want you to think about, and as I was reading stuff, I've done this workshop or a variation of it several times, not only for the field that we primarily focus, but I've been doing some trainings for CASA, the court affiliated advocates for children. And one of the things that we spent quite a bit of time on is doing this rituals and traditions and how they can help the families and the children that they're working with start to turn that around with the holidays coming. So there's really been a lot of interest in how does this fit in with what we're doing now. Many Americans see alcohol or other drugs as synonymous with parties and barbecues. If you're having a party, if you're having a barbecue, if you're having to get together, well, we've got to have beer, or we've got to have alcohol, or we have to have martinis, depending on what kind of party, depending on what kind of barbecue. If you're tailgating, people automatically think, well, we have to have a cooler. And the culture often encourages alcohol and other drugs as a coping mechanism. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the TV, pick up magazines, look at the things that are out there that are supporting the use of alcohol or other substances as a coping mechanism. If it's been a hard day, a long day, and I'm tired, I've got to have a beer. I've got to stop at the bar. Maybe I'll relax with a glass of wine. That's okay if that fits your environment and fits it in a healthy way. But the fact that the message that's often out there is this is the only way, and being able to step back and take a look at that is important. And for many, this is the tradition. It's not unknown. Happens more than you would probably realize. And I learned that especially as a coordinator. I've been in this field a lot of years, but when I was coordinating outpatient services, so many of the people that came into services, this is how they grew up. There's that generational use of substances to celebrate the holidays or any event. So something to think about. young people, I live in a college town. We're headquartered in Charleston, Illinois. Eastern Illinois University's here. I grew up 2 blocks from it. Raised a son that went through the fraternities there. A big part of what they do in their celebrations involved alcohol. And that was a big part of traditions. And also being from a college town, I know there were also a lot of issues from that. So taking a look at that's important. How can we start to address some of those? Tradition's a pattern of behavior. It reflects and it reinforces a family or a community. As we have become more and more aware of ROSC and looking at the community as a whole, as a way to help people be strong in their recovery efforts, both people with a substance use disorder, gambling disorder, whatever, and the family that goes with it. It's not just family, it's the whole big picture. How do we make our communities healthier, and what kind of traditions can we use to do that? Tradition is group values, attitudes, or beliefs. It's primarily inherited through our parents or ancestry. When we talk about traditions, I think immediately people usually go to family more than they do community, but I don't want us to leave out the community as a whole. And it reflects the history of the ancestry. I mean, I think about tradition. I live in a house that we put on my grandparents' farmland. And as I look out my windows here in the country, I can see pieces of things that came from my grandparents, the Sunday meals that we used to always have, because you did that, it was tradition. And Christmas Eve was spent with my mother's family, but Christmas Day was spent out here at what we called the farm, with big get together of cousins and everything. And that history has been passed down. And I now live there. We don't have those big get togethers because the family's all spread out. Even my own children are pretty much so spread out. But it's important to remember that these are things we hang on to. My kids, when we do get together, they'll laugh and talk about the traditions and the things that happen. Families and communities often think that traditions have to fall around the holidays, but that's not always the case. We want to remember we're talking about the holidays now because that's an extremely high stress time. Chaos gets a little more serious and in depth oftentimes, especially as people get together and deal with the environment around the holidays. But traditions can be at other times. Some of the most magical memories are created at random times when you just kind of laugh and you have to sit back and laugh. I want you to have fun. If you can think of a time that something just happened and was integrated as a tradition into your family, I would love for you to post it, and we'll share a little bit of that. Tug of wars are oftentimes, right time of year in Illinois. It's probably not going to be in the winter, but it might be. You never know. One of the things that's kind of happened with my granddaughters, because we've ended up raising 3 generations of children, having 4 generations of substance use and mental health issues in my life. I've learned that a lot of the traditions that we really enjoy now are those moments that just happen at random times. My granddaughter that we had guardianship of loved the rain, and instead of fighting it all the time, I finally said when it was a safe time, let's just take off our shoes and our boots and get out there and splash in the puddles. And that's something that's been passed on to the next generation now. Those 2 granddaughters now do that with their children, which is really neat. It's a tradition. Who would have thought? Playing games. My sister and I have carried on the family tradition. It's just my sister and I. Our parents died when we were pretty young, but we brought our families together like we used to get together and do games. Game night is Christmas Eve. Now our kids are all grown up and kind of moving away, so it doesn't happen as often or as many of them, but those are traditions, and those are times that we remember, make us feel good, make us feel like we're part of something much larger than just our small family, that we're part of the universe that's feeling good and enjoying the holiday. I had asked you to share in the chat a magical tradition created at some time in your life. If you can come up with something like that, put it in, and we'll have Tiffany share that back out. I think that asking you to think back and do some of those things, run it through your mind. What are those things that really are tradition that I'd never thought about as being tradition, that I'd never thought about as being a ritual? One of the rituals that I think of on my father's side of the family, anytime the family got together, we always, before we ate, we sang what's called the doxology. And we had a big reunion here with all the cousins. It's probably been 15 years ago now, but everybody came together. And before we ate at those different times, as people came in from all across the United States, we just automatically took a hold of hands and did that. I mean, it was such a part of who we are and of our tradition and ritual that it continued. Here's some pictures of different things that are family: getting the tree, going to church, or a faith-based event. In the summer, reunions, kids are playing sports and softball, so there is a meal that you all share together. Another big place, especially having a college right here, graduation. What you do at graduation is very much a tradition or a ritual usually in families, and those are celebrated differently. And Halloween has become very much a holiday. And there are a lot of different rituals shared with that. Some of them get pretty wild, but for the most part, they're fun. One of the things that I think is really important around tradition, and some of the trainings I used to do and looking at child development and development through the years, one of the things as we grow up is identifying who I am. Who am I? I need to learn that. I need to know as I'm growing and developing where I fit in. What is important? What's important to my family? What's important to my community? Why would that be important to me? Looking at that. What is ahead? What's the future? How do I make things fit in a healthy way? What are the expectations that my family and my community have for me? What are expectations in social settings? And one of the most important things is traditions and rituals can help you clarify and then support the value system that you have. And hopefully, as we work at supporting, enhancing our traditions, helping create healthier environments, it's who I want and will be. It's those developmental things that traditions can be very important for. And I think sometimes we forget that. I've got a 5-year-old great-granddaughter that we had for 5 years. She's now living with one of her parents in a very positive environment. This was a good thing. But I listened to her, and already she's trying to figure out who she is and where she fits in. She talks about what's important to her. And I feel very proud that she's had a good start. I want to say that we had some influence on that. But to start to understand that, and she looks at what's ahead. She knows that she's not living with us anymore, that she's moved into a different family setting, although we still see her 2 and 3 nights a week. What's ahead? She looks at that. And some of the traditions that she's being introduced to, she loves because they're different than ours. And it's going to help her identify who she's going to be. Another thing to look at is if there's something as large as a traditional family recipe based on cultural heritage, or as small as some saying that's started by a grandfather, those are fun things to keep going and to build on. When I married my husband, and I had him for a long time, taking a look at how different some of his family traditions were compared to mine, and there were similarities too. How we made the stuffing for turkey. That was a traditional family recipe, and it wasn't wavered. And I learned that, and I've carried that on into our family here. And my children have gone ahead and carried that on. And I see recipe spelled wrong. That's an oops. So does anyone have a family saying that has been generated that you could share? I think sometimes those are kind of fun. Somebody will start it, and pretty soon everybody's saying it when you get together. It's kind of a signal. Some of those small traditional family isn't just sayings, it might be gestures. You get together in a group and you might gesture to another family member or a friend. This happens in social settings. A wink, a nod, that you know what that means because it's tradition. This is how you respond to things that are in that environment when that person's there. Without family traditions, many of our stories and beliefs and teachings would easily be lost through the generations. I'm a big believer in family stories. I think as we look at the issue of stigma that's associated with substance use disorder and gambling, mental health, stressors that we experience, that stigma often gets in the way of healthy recoveries for families, for communities that need that support, that positive support. So we need to start sharing our stories because there's so much more success out there than we understand. And I don't want to disrespect the anonymity of people that are on a recovery journey. But as a family member, I'm on a recovery journey. I have lived through my dad's addiction. My husband's got 40 some years of recovery. I have a son with about 15 to 18 years of recovery. Another family member that's still doing some struggling. But those stories of success let people know they aren't alone and let them know that recovery is possible. And our communities need to know that. So I think a lot of the stories are an important piece. Traditions often impact community attitudes towards substance use and abuse. We know that. Living in a college town, there are certain bars and gathering places that we know that the attitude is probably much more lenient than some other areas in the community. Tradition, just because of the traditions of college age growth experiences. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's different. And since all families and communities are unique, the traditions created are going to be unique. And I think that's where we've run into a lot of problem in our environment right now across our country, is that we aren't understanding that traditions and rituals are unique and special to the family and community that we grew up in. It doesn't make them good. It doesn't make them bad. It would be nice if we'd learn more about them. And I've been very blessed to have done a lot of travel with my different roles in this field over the last 40 years. So I find it exciting when I learn about more families and communities and the uniqueness of the things that they offer through their traditions. The impact on children is strong. Tradition creates a connection. It connects them to parents. It connects them to the community at large. Important things that we need as a human being is that feeling. Similar traditions, if it's things that we can share, things that we can over the years, their family. It's very much a tradition for us. And it's very important because it's a strong connection. And we are the ones that will be very supportive of each other as we become the older generation and look for support, not just among our parents and siblings, but from outside. And it's important to share that connection and let our children feel a strong sense of belonging. It's a great way to provide stability and routine in our child's life. We have the 5-year-old great-granddaughter that we had for a while loved gymnastics. Her mother was extremely good in gymnastics. And this is a tradition that she wants to carry on, even as a 5-year-old. And so every Monday night, which will be this evening, she will get picked up and she will go there, and then she'll go get her taco afterwards. And she'll have to take her bath because she's a sweaty little gymnast and go to bed early. It's all part of creating that tradition, that ritual. We're carrying on the tradition of her mom, and she's got it in her life, and that's part of her routine and makes her feel very connected. Traditions create moments when children can look forward to when they're young, and then they can look back on it as adults. Our granddaughter that was a gymnast looks back on that and loves it that her daughter is doing some of that. Even though they aren't together as a family, it's something when they are visiting with each other and they get to share that, and it makes them feel connected. And it tells our children a personalized story about who they are, what's important to us and to the community at large. We all have a story to tell. I like this. When you're young, your grandparents try to tell you their history. And you don't care because it doesn't interest you at the time. Later on, you wish you had written down what they said. And I think that's very true. My sons would tell you, they knew my parents. My parents died when I was in my early 30s. They were both in their early 50s. And they, especially my father, had wonderful stories to tell. He'd grown up out here where I live now. That family I was very close to. Both my sister and I say, had we known that he would be gone in his early 50s, we wish we had written those down, because there's just the two of us. So those stories are a little hard to remember, but he is the one that got me interested in giving back to my community. He was a social worker. He was the person that taught me to care about other people and to do what I can do to make life better for our world. So I'm very grateful for that. Traditions are important to establish family bonds, solid structure, sense of continuity. Got me all tongue-tied there, and a feeling of belonging. And I kind of had to laugh. So I was looking through some things that came up on the internet. Hickory Farms makes traditions matter. Hickory Farms, the food that you'll see often, the packages that you'll see sold at malls, at flea markets. You can order it online now, of course, with everything out there. They understand that importance of traditions. Start your hickory traditions today. My sister has 2 or 3 things like this that she sends to people, and it's part of her tradition, and people would be very disappointed if that wasn't there. We have a partner, significant other in this family that always sends us Omaha steak packages for Christmas because she knows we love it. And would I be disappointed? Probably a little bit. I wouldn't be upset if she didn't send it, but it's become very much a tradition. So we just kind of put those back and save it till they're visiting. Traditions teach values, and when violated, when those values get violated, sometimes we end up with substance use disorder. Families that are living under stresses may start using that as a way to manage. Oftentimes then those values kind of start to disintegrate some. So we want to know what we can do to support those. Traditions support and communicate a family's belief system. They instill faith and transfer the family's perspective on life experiences. Love these pictures. These are different things that you'll see at the holidays. I always go to this picture. I have a grandson that was born in Alaska. And then they moved to New York City where his other grandparents lived. And we used to go visit on Thanksgiving some, and his grandparents lived in downtown New York. And part of Thanksgiving was the Thanksgiving parade. He'd stand at the window and watch, or we'd go down on the street and watch. And that was very much a tradition for a number of years. We know that families serve as a model for all relationships. The way an individual is cared for, supported, encouraged, allowed to express themselves or not, which can have a very negative effect and sometimes the results of some trauma. If allowed to express and be themselves or not in the family, enormously influences the choices and decisions our children make as they move into the future. So again, allowing those stories, letting people know they aren't the only one living in some environments. I love this picture, Kwanzaa, which will start right at the Christmas holiday, and the 7 principles that go with that. Not all traditions are major events. Some are smaller. They may have private interactions. It's like the secret language between parents and kids. I can remember it's kind of like what I was sharing earlier, the language or tradition between friends or family that you nod each other when you're in a big group. But parents often have a body language. It doesn't have to be words with their kids. They may be shared rituals that can happen every day and often offer something not only to look forward to, but to look back on later. And in a chaotic and confusing world, sometimes a little consistency is what we need. So traditions and rituals, even though they aren't something you may do every day, and it may only be once a year, that consistency can be very important. I see a couple of more chats have been posted. Tiffany, is it something we need to share?
No, I think somebody had a little bit of an issue with audio, but I'm pretty sure that they are good now.
Okay, good. I live in the country. I'm not showing anything on mine, but for the most part, I do fine when I do Zoom from here. But if you are having trouble, be sure and put it in there because I'll need to know for future. Okay, it's the little memories that will last a lifetime. Those rituals and traditions that you do with your children, with the other members of your family, that you do that involve your community. The one stop I know took place here and this last weekend, and many volunteers worked with that, the one-stop shop, so that our children have a Christmas coming and our families have what they need to get by. And it's very much a tradition for a number of people that I know that they participate in that. And the thing that's great is then that's a tradition that their family recognizes, and it makes them feel a part of something larger than themselves. Reunions, get-togethers. When I first met my husband's family, the first together I went to, and it was very much a tradition. On Thanksgiving, you went to his grandparents and that family. There were 126 people there, and that wasn't near all of them. And it was very much a tradition, let me tell you, for a little gal from Central Illinois who didn't have a huge family like that. It was very surprising, but it was wonderful. And that tradition became very important to me and to my children when they were younger. I was just looking at the time, to take a look at how things may change. Grandparents may not be able to prepare large family dinners anymore, maybe due to finances, to physical care. And then as your family moves away, we didn't have anybody here at Thanksgiving, and I used to have 30, 35 people here because geographically people weren't there. Now at Christmas, we will be brought back together, maybe not that many people, but we will. Financial stress is another thing that impacts traditions. Maturing children want to make their own traditions. My oldest son and his partner She has a granddaughter and a family and her kids, and they both decided as a couple at Christmas, they do a quick Christmas visit and then they take off on their own. They've created their own tradition over the years they've been together. Parents may not live together, so children spend time with differing traditions and rituals. It's very, very definitely happens, especially as we see more blended families, as we see more single parent families. Those traditions and rituals may be very different between them. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing. Death in the family changes family structure. My father was buried on Christmas Eve, and our family structure changed. I was married. I had 3 children. They were pretty young, and those changes in the structure changed some of our rituals and traditions in the way that we did them. A new marriage or relationship means new obligations for a family and or community celebrations that you've done. In our area, all our little communities around here pretty much so had a Christmas parade. They had a celebration on the square type of thing, and not necessarily a Hallmark Christmas movie, but real close. The other thing that changes those traditions is children may be placed in kinship care or foster care, and that changes things too. So talking with our families and our children as traditions may change is important, and hanging on to pieces of it can be very important. One of the things I do for our granddaughter that lived here with us, I was a big picture taker. She lives just 10 miles from here. We still see her on an ongoing basis, but I go back and I pull out pictures of when she was littler and growing up, and I send her 3 every week, and she loves it. She has a box that she puts those pictures in, and it makes her still feel connected. And the one thing that I wanted to share with you that I think if you are experiencing any issues of the chaos around substance use, mental health, gambling, I think taking a look at the stages of change, and we've got about 12 minutes to do that. And when I found this, it was like this light bulb went off. I'm going, when we do assessments for people coming into treatment, we look at the stages of change. When we do updates, when we do continuing care treatment plans and things, we look at what stage of change they're in. And this was such a wonderful fit. Sandy Swenson wrote an article about 5 traditions for Christmas. And that was shared with another person that works for Hazelton. They very much had similar ideas. And I want to read this because I think that this is what many of us have experienced. The home was full of pleasant aromas, laughter, and things to be thankful for. But things quickly changed when addiction joined the family. And those precious memories and traditions now feel like they happened in another lifetime. When my father's alcoholism, even though he was a very highly functioning alcoholic, even up until his early death, as that progressed, a lot of the memories and traditions started to change. How can we possibly enjoy the holidays when our loved one is addicted and they can't stay sober from alcohol and other drugs? This really got me, the empty chair at the table, because I've had that. 2 people in my life, and I still have one, that leaves an empty chair at the table. The holidays might look completely different nowadays. The laughter and smiles have been replaced with tokens of addiction. An empty place at the dinner table or unspoken feelings of disappointment, anger, and fear. Whatever we feel, thankful we're not. The empty chair at the table. As we look at the stages of change, pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance, those of you that work in a discipline that uses this, understand it. Denial. Well, I might consider doing something, but I've got to get prepared. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. Then I have to do it. And somewhere in here, we usually evaluate all that before we're actually in ongoing maintenance. But these are the 5 formal actions that go with that. And this fits with the 5 stages that the authors Beverly Converse and Sandy Swenson came up with. Looking at those stages of change, pre-contemplation. Letting go of your expectations and feel your feelings is really hard, but step 1 that fits with that is move out of the denial. Let go of the expectations that that empty chair is going to be filled. And feel your feelings. They may hurt a little. You may feel some grief. Our next workshop in January addresses those grief feelings that go with the chaos of families. But that's part of the pre-contemplation stage of change. The next stage, appreciate the family members who are here. You may have an empty chair, you may have 2. But who are the people that showed up to celebrate, to recognize family tradition, to cut the turkey at Thanksgiving with you, to share packages or prayer or church with you? Appreciate the family members who are here, that contemplation. Who can I count on? Who's going to be here? What do I need to think about? Am I ready to recognize the fact that there's an empty chair at the table, but I can do better? Third stage, preparation. And that's looking at starting your own traditions. It doesn't mean that you necessarily start new ones, but how do you adapt ones that have been there? If there's an empty chair at the table, do you move it out? Is that part of that preparation? Start your own traditions. I'm not going to sit here and worry about this. I'm going to recognize that I've got people coming that I enjoy, that I can share my life with, that we can come together as a unit and begin to move through this and know that we can take care of ourselves. That preparation. Fourth step, be intentional about gratitude. What are the things I'm thankful for? What are the things I can do in kindness? What traditions can I establish that give back in a positive way to my family, to my community? What actions can I take? And one of those, again, may be moving that empty chair from the table, so to speak. How do I let people that do share my holiday, that do sit down at my table, how do I let them know how important they are to me and that we can do this together and that we can be supportive? What kind of action can I take? And the fifth step, let the healing happen and hope will come. How do I maintain that? How do I keep the okayness? How do we move ahead and keep it happening? There needs to be a plan. Action can take place one time, but how do I do it next year? How do I prepare for next year? How do I maintain that? It's all part of those stages that kind of, and there's not just definite separate lines between each one. They have a tendency to kind of run together. Thinking about your action and doing it means you may have to change your preparation. You're going to evaluate some of these things as you go through it. But what works for me? What works for my family? What works for my community? If I am dreading that empty chair at the table come Christmas Eve dinner, or somebody's going to miss one of the nights of the Hanukkah celebration, or all the nights, how do I make this fit in a positive way for the people that remain? How do we carry on those traditions and be okay? In the this whole process, we always know there's the possibility of relapse too, which means that you kind of go back and you start again looking at these different stages of change. But you can always work through them again. And that's part of that evaluation. How do I take care of myself? How do I take care of my community? Do I volunteer to serve meals at some place that's offering meals to the homeless or to people that need that on the holiday? Is that part of what I do? Gratitude and a new tradition, preparing for that, and a new tradition that shows gratitude. And I put this in here because the East Central Illinois ROSC, which is, I believe it's 6 now, ROSC councils that have coordinators in this area. I sit in on some of those councils, usually on a monthly aspect, looking at it from the family side of it and having input on suggestions of things that groups can do in the family and looking at their needs assessment. But I love this. They came up with 10 healthy habits, activities, and tools to get through the holidays. And I want to share those with you because they do impact families and they have something to do with traditions. Attend a recovery meeting. You know, it can be a self-help group. It can, 12-step meeting. It can be celebrate recovery. It could be a SMART meeting. It could be a faith-based support group. But attend a recovery meeting. And if you're a family member, find Al-Anon, Nar-Anon. Celebrate Recovery includes family members. And you can make that part of your holiday tradition. And hopefully you'll carry it on through the rest of the year. But it's something that helps you get through that. Talk to someone who supports recovery. I believe families have recovery journeys just like people that are actually experiencing substance use disorder, mental health, and gambling issues. I have a recovery journey. I live the serenity prayer. That's what keeps my sanity. You can't go through 4 generations without learning how to take care of yourself. And that's why I'm such an advocate that families can do this. Family members can do this. And you can also then reach out to your community. Find out where the ROSC councils are in your area and join one. Give them input as to what families need, what kind of support, what positives and negatives you see in your community. It's very important that people with lived experience be a part of that process. Always have an escape plan. If you're going to a party, if you're going somewhere, and if you're a family member and you're going with someone, be aware, help an escape plan be put in place. If you're going to a get-together that's always been a tradition, but there could be an issue, have an escape plan. Avoid toxic and stressful situations. Now, we know in the holidays, those are high. That's one reason we do this workshop around the holidays. Go back to your healthy traditions. Stressful situations can be reduced if you stop and look at what are the positive traditions. Volunteer in your community. Again, I talked about the one-stop shop. We've got meals that need to be served to people, a lot of churches in your area, Salvation Army, different places like that will have opportunities for you to be a volunteer in your community. Make your own holiday traditions. Step out of the box. Figure out what to do with that empty chair and how to put a positive holiday tradition in its place. Reward yourself for being a person that's moving forward. Make a gratitude list. I'm such a believer in that, especially at Thanksgiving and through the holidays. Stop and reflect on the year that's passed and make a gratitude list. And after the last 2 years and the chaos we've had, you deserve that. And remember that all feelings will eventually pass. So if you feel stressed, look at the resources. And it's 2:00 and it's time for us to be down. I just wanted to share there's ways to connect kids to their heritage and their traditions. Look at the PBS website for parents. Also look at Sesame Street and Communities. They address all these different topics with all kinds of resources. And one of them is, how do you look at building traditions and resiliency through that? I have a thankful book to give away. The first person to respond to my email, so look at my email, the first person to respond to my email with a holiday tradition or suggestion of how they will use this, I will send the book to. I just need your address and I need you to respond. And it'll be this book most likely. I really like this one. And let me go see if I can go back here and put up my email again. There will be a survey as soon as I shut this down. So there we go. seednancyp@seedcouncil.com. I appreciate you joining me. I appreciate all of you and what you do. I recognized a lot of the names. Like I said, I wish I could be there and give you a holiday hug. And please join us. We'll have another webinar that looks at the whole grief process that's tied with the family and the chaos and how to move forward and move through that on January 25th at 1 o'clock. When I send out your certificates in the next week, I'll also send out the flyer for signing up to that. I will send you a couple of articles that the 5 traditions to get through the holidays. And then I have some listings, articles that list really great ideas for increasing that. It's time to go. I know you guys are busy. Thank you. Have a wonderful holiday, however you choose to celebrate and whatever your rituals and traditions are. And I will be thinking of all of you as we move through this exciting time. Goodbye. See you later.